The first transmission from the void was neither a greeting nor a declaration of war. It was a notice of annexation. The Cathari Collective, having observed Earth from the periphery of our solar system for decades, had concluded humanity posed no meaningful threat. Their assessment, delivered in cool, synthesized tones across every frequency, stated that resistance would be statistically negligible and evolutionarily pathetic. They saw our militaries, our tanks, jets, and missiles as quaint artifacts of a species still wrestling with its own aggression. Their ships, sleek obsidian daggers that blotted out the sun over 100 cities simultaneously, operated on principles we barely understood, shrugging off kinetic and energy weapons alike. They came not as conquerors, but as landlords arriving to claim a neglected property. The first week was a global funeral for conventional warfare. Operation Skyhammer, the unified counter-offensive of what remained of the world's air forces, ended in silent, glittering oblivion as the Cathari point defense systems turned 200 advanced fighters into expanding clouds of metallic dust before a single shot could be fired. Naval task forces were immobilized, their electronics fried by targeted ionic pulses. Armies found their communications jammed, their GPS guiding them into dead ends, their sophisticated gear suddenly useless. The Cathari didn't fight battles, they administered nullifications. Their ground troops, bipedal but jointed all wrong, moved in perfect, silent coordination, their energy weapons disabling any organized resistance with chilling efficiency. They weren't cruel, merely thorough. And in their thoroughness, they made their fatal error. They believed they had seen everything humanity had to offer. Dr. Aris Thorne saw the flaw in their logic from a mountainside bunker in Colorado. A historian of all things, specializing in asymmetric warfare, he had been evacuated with other non-essential personnel. As the military leaders despaired over their neutralized technology, Aris pored over maps, not of troop deployments, but of infrastructure, geology, and weather patterns. "They've cataloged our weapons," he muttered to the skeptical general in charge of the refuge. "But they've ignored our terrain. They understand our science, but not our cunning." The Cathari established their primary planetary control hub in the geographically central, geologically stable Great Plains of North America. A vast hexagonal platform descended, from which their delicate, spidery structures grew, tapping geothermal energy and emitting the damping field that crippled our electronics for 1,000 miles. It was a masterpiece of efficient, centralized control. To the Cathari, it was logical. To Aris Thorne, it was a sitting duck. His proposal, Project Jericho, was initially met with derision. It involved no lasers, no missiles, no code. It involved weather balloons, agricultural drone sprayers, and several thousand tons of a specially formulated conductive carbon nanotube dust, while the world's remaining special forces units staged desperate, costly raids to steal Cathari. Energy cells for study, Thorne's team worked in abandoned university labs and farm co-ops. The Cathari sensors, designed to identify weapons-grade materials and energy signatures, registered the activities as irrelevant industrial and agricultural residue. Human ingenuity, when divorced from the intent to destroy, was invisible to them. The opening move of the masterclass was not an attack, but a delivery. Over 3 nights, under the cover of predicted heavy cloud cover, a fleet of retrofitted crop dusters and high-altitude balloons released the first payload. The dust, microscopically fine and electrostatically charged, was carried on the jet stream. It settled invisibly over the plains, coating the alien structures in a faint gray film. The Cathari environmental filters, designed to stop toxins and particulates, classified it as harmless terrestrial pollen. The second phase involved the activation of a series of decommissioned deep-core geothermal survey charges strategically placed along a minor fault line 200 miles away. Their simultaneous detonation, masked as seismic activity, did no damage to the Cathari base. but it sent a precise, powerful vibration through the continental plate. The dust, by design, was piezoelectric. Under the intense, focused pressure wave, it generated a massive, instantaneous, and highly localized electrical charge. The Great Plains control hub wasn't struck by lightning. It became lightning. A web of actinic blue energy, born from the very ground they stood on, crawled over every surface. The Cathari systems, exquisitely sensitive and interconnected, experienced a cascade failure. The damping field flickered and died. For the first time in months, radios crackled to life across the Midwest. The Cathari response was swift and confused. They rerouted control to secondary hubs in Siberia and the Sahara. They scanned for energy weapons, for missile launches, for any conventional threat. They found nothing. The attack had come from the planet itself, weaponized by a compound they had walked through without a second thought. It was illogical. It was impossible. It was, in their assessment, an anomaly. Humanity, however, had just remembered how to play dirty. The lesson continued. In Siberia, the Cathari hub drew coolant from a deep frozen lake. Human operatives, surviving on old-world hunting skills and fur coats, introduced a tailored bacterium into the inflow. The microbe, a modified extremophile, didn't attack the alien metal. It simply thrived in the supercooled liquid, reproducing exponentially and forming a dense, insulating biofilm that choked the coolant conduits. The hub's reactors, lacking proper cooling, went into automatic shutdown, plunging the facility into a powerless, frigid darkness the aliens were physically unequipped to endure. In the Sahara, the hub relied on vast solar arrays, a coordinated effort using mirrors made from polished debris and salvaged satellite dishes, concentrated sunlight not on the energy collectors, but on the thermal radiators. The Cathari systems, designed to manage expected heat loads from the sun, were overwhelmed by the focused, man-made glare. Critical components melted, not from an attack, but from their own redirected power source. The aliens scrambled their fighters, but the human teams were already gone, their weapons nothing more than glass and scrap metal arranged at the right angles. The Masterclass reached its crescendo with the orbital fleet. The Cathari command ship, the Indomitable Will, hung in geosynchronous orbit, a silent judge over the planet. It was protected by gravitic shields that could deflect asteroids and absorb gigaton yields. Its sensors could track every ship, missile, and energy pulse from Mercury to Jupiter. It was, by any metric, invulnerable. Aris Thorne, now coordinating the scattered resistance, looked at a different set of data: orbital debris catalogs. Decades of space exploration had left a necklace of junk around Earth: defunct satellites, spent booster stages, screws, and fragments. The Cathari shields handled them easily, vaporizing anything on a collision course. Thorne's idea was not to crash something into the ship, but to suffocate it, using reactivated satellite thrusters and calculations performed on salvaged civilian computers. A global team of astronomers and programmers executed Operation Goliath Sling. They didn't alter the debris' course toward the ship. Instead, they carefully nudged the trajectories of thousands of pieces, some no bigger than a coin, into a precise converging cloud in the path of the Indomitable Will's orbit. The Cathari point defense systems activated, blasting the approaching cloud into even finer particles. For a full hour, the space around the command ship was a continuous, dazzling fireworks display of defensive fire. Then, the systems began to overheat. The logic was impeccable. Destroy the threat. But the threat was not a singular object. It was a cumulative, kinetic deluge. As the defensive lasers faltered, a fine, molten mist of vaporized metal began to condense on the ship's hull. It cooled into an uneven, adhesive slag. More debris, now undestroyed, impacted this slag, welding into it. Within 6 hours, The indomitable will was encased in a ragged, kilometers-wide cocoon of accreted space junk. Its sensors were blinded. Its communication arrays were blocked. Its elegant, dagger-like shape was buried under the physical testament of human industry and carelessness. It was trapped, not by a weapon, but by its own relentless defense against a nuisance. The final communication from the Cathari Collective was not broadcast. It was a tight beam transmission, directed at the Colorado bunker, its origin point traced from the crippled command ship. The synthesized voice was gone, replaced by a strained, translated analog of their own speech patterns. "You possess no singular technology we fear," the message stated. "Your power generation is primitive. Your material science is elementary. Your understanding of physics is provincial. Yet, you weaponize pollen. You weaponize bacteria. You weaponize light and rust and your own forgotten trash. You turn your world and your carelessness into arsenals. This is not warfare. This is alchemy. This is chaos given intent." The message paused, a significant lapse for a species that communicated near instantly. "We came to manage a resource. We did not anticipate managing a thermodynamic anomaly, a species that can turn anything into a weapon simply by looking at it differently cannot be annexed. It can only be contained or avoided. We shall choose the latter." One by one, the obsidian ships disengaged. They pulled away from Earth, leaving their disabled structures behind. The indomitable will remained, a grotesque monument in the sky, its crew eventually evacuated by smaller craft. It now orbits silently, a tomb for their assumptions. We won, not because we were stronger, but because we were unpredictable. Not because we had better technology, but because we could see 1,000 uses for things that weren't technology at all. The Cathari assessed our tools and found them wanting. They failed to assess our imagination. They came expecting a war of escalation, of energy shield versus bigger energy shield. They were not prepared for a war of translation, where a historian's thesis became a battle plan, where a farmer's dust became a weapon of mass disruption. The victory left scars, of course. Our infrastructure is in ruins, our old certainties shattered. But we walk the streets of our broken cities with a new, hard light in our eyes. We look at a soda can, a garden hose, a traffic jam, and we see not just objects, but possibilities. The galaxy may be full of species with unimaginable power, but as the Cathari learned, you should never, ever underestimate a species that can imagine the unimaginable uses for absolutely everything. The ultimate tactical masterclass isn't fought with the weapons you have. It's won with the weapons they never see coming.